Welcome everyone to the Dr. Abs Healthcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brian Abasolo, aka Dr. Abs, and on today's show we have Dr. Michael BIAMONTE, who is one of the leading health experts in Candida, a fungal infection caused by yeast. He helps people with many other health issues as well, such as leaky gut, toxic metals, hormone irregularities, constipation, adrenal fatigue, thyroid imbalances, diabetes, and also a condition many women face, vaginal yeast infections. As a practitioner for over 30 years, he is dedicated to improving the lives of his patients and helping them get back to living. He is the author of the Candida Chronicles, which details its history, causes, symptoms, its effects on human health, and treatments. Through his unique combination of laboratory testing, Candida diet plans, vitamins, and supplements, he has the solution to remove Candida from people's systems and help them achieve a full body overhaul. He holds a doctorate of naturopathy and is a New York State certified clinical nutritionist. He is a professional member of the International and American Association of Clinical Nutritionists, the American College of Nutrition, and is a member of the Scientific Advisory Board for the Clinical Nutrition Certification Program, where he literally writes the questions for the test to become a nutritionist. I cannot wait to talk to Dr. BIAMONTE about this subject. It's so fascinating. I think it affects so many people. So let's dive right in. Let's bring in Dr. BIAMONTE. Dr. BIAMONTE, welcome to the Healthcast. How are you today?
Very good, my friend. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm really fascinated by the subject that we're going to talk today because I feel like it does affect so many people, and a lot of people don't know about it. But you are one of the leading health experts when it comes to Candida.
Yes.
I'm sorry. You're
Yes.
one of the health experts when it comes to Candida, and I'd love for you to just expand on that subject. But first off, can you just explain for the audience what Candida is and how it affects us?
Sure. Well, Candida is a yeast organism. It's actually an organism that's referred to as dimorphic, which dimorphic means two lives. Candida can live as a yeast, or it can change itself to a fungus. And it lives in both states in the intestinal tract. Candida is normal to be found in your intestinal tract in small amounts. And it's normally controlled by and used as food by your friendly bacteria, which are the probiotics that we all hear so much about on TV commercials. The problem becomes when Candida becomes dominant in your intestines and it overgrows due to a lack of the probiotics. Now, typically what happens is the person's minding their own business and something happens to lower the population of the probiotics in their intestines. That can be a shock or a trauma to the body. It could be various medications like antibiotics, different types of steroids. It even could be antacid medications can do that. Toxicity can do that of different types. If someone goes in a swimming pool and swallows too much chlorine, that could kill their friendly bacteria. If they're exposed to mercury or other toxins, that can kill it. So bottom line is something happens that compromises the friendly bacteria that normally lives throughout your intestinal tract. Once that happens, Candida multiplies and it becomes dominant. And Candida is a pathogen, so it can cause various.
Still there? Oh. Can you hear me? You're on mute. You just need to unmute yourself.
Okay, very good. That should have
There you go. You were saying it's a pathogen and it could lead to?
It leads to different diseases and disease-like symptoms when it overgrows in your body. Because basically it's like a parasite. It eats the food that you eat, primarily sugars and starches, and then it releases all types of toxins. It releases mycotoxins, which are fungal-related toxins that affect your nervous system adversely. And it, believe it or not, brews alcohol in your system and releases lots of alcohol, which is why it causes cognitive problems. People lose their memory, they forget names, they forget things, they're mildly intoxicated from it.
Wow. You mentioned something there that the Candida attacks or basically uses up our food, and I've always been fascinated about that with parasites and things like that. You mentioned sugars and carbs. what kind of a diet do you recommend for people out there? Because obviously there's, the keto diet, the paleo diet, which are, lower glycemic and low carb. Do you recommend any of those diets for somebody who has Candida?
No, actually, we have very specific diets for Candida that are not too far away from those types of diets. Those diets are workable for Candida, but we have things that are more specific. But to expand a little bit more on the food, Candida primarily eats sugar or starch that breaks down to sugar like any other yeast or fungus would. But Candida also has certain nutrients that it requires in high amounts. One is vitamin D, and the other is iron. And as a matter of fact, some of the pharmaceuticals that are used and are prescribed to kill Candida, they essentially work by blocking the Candida's ability to absorb iron and vitamin D. So therefore, if someone had Candida and they knew they had it, taking iron supplements, taking vitamin D supplements would be a bad idea because it would make the condition worse.
Oh, wow. And so those medications that you're talking about that block a Candida from absorbing the vitamin D, does that affect your natural absorption of the vitamin D? Because obviously that's a key nutrient in our bodies.
No, it only affects the Candida's ability to absorb.
Gotcha. Okay. And you talked about these medications out there, but why do the traditional treatments fail for Candida? And if you could go over them really quickly, if you can.
Well, just a little background. When I first discovered Candida, it was in the mid 80s when I was working on the biocybernetics project, which is a computer model that was able to study lab tests for the astronauts and determine what vitamins the astronauts would need in the space station. That's how I first discovered Candida. And it's the darndest thing because it surprises you constantly the more you learn about it. When you have Candida, you have to be careful of what you eat, of course. But the problem is that when you try to kill it, diet doesn't do it alone. And that's caused people on the internet to come up with the craziest diets that practically starve you to control the Candida because they don't know what else to do. When you use medications to kill Candida, the first major epiphany I had was hearing patients come to me and saying, Dr. So-and-so, he put me on nystatin, he put me on ketoconazole, he put me on these different drugs to kill the Candida. I felt great for a couple of months and then it all came back. So he says, well, I have to raise the dose. So he raised the dose of the medications and I got even worse.
Wow.
And that's where I learned, and a lot of what I've learned and why I'm considered the expert on Candida is primarily because I listened to my patients and I listened to what went wrong. And then I took what they told me and I hit the textbooks to try to figure out. I reversed engineered what was going on. And I discovered that Candida mutates very easily and it genetically switches. So it changes species to become resistant to the medication. And I found by studying a book called Bifidobacteria and its uses, I found that Candida typically just starts mutating at about 21 days when it's been exposed to the same medication. So if you put a person on an herb or a drug to fight Candida, somewhere around the 21-day mark, the mother cells of the Candida start to genetically impart data to the daughter cells, explaining to them how to avoid being killed by this medicine. So the Candida is mutating and it becomes drug resistant is essentially what the bottom line is.
And for these traditional drug therapies, are there side effects that come with them?
Second problem is that if you were to stay on the medication long enough to actually really kill the Candida, it would damage your liver and kidneys.
Wow. Okay. So that's not good.
No.
So let's talk about, you brought an interesting fact about the nutritional testing and the unprecedented computer software program that you're able to study the blood work with and the mineral tests and the whole nine. Can you talk a little bit more about that as far as more in depth about what that's actually checking for? And then as well as nutritional supplements that don't cause those side effects that can aid in alleviating Candida symptoms?
Well, actually, there are nutritional supplements that can help with Candida symptoms, but it's kind of a waste of time.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, because the only thing that really matters is getting rid of the Candida. And I'll tell you, to diverge a little bit, cancer and Candida have a lot in common. And I shriek when I hear of doctors who are putting people on programs where they're trying to desensitize the person to the Candida toxins. So they're trying to relieve the Candida symptoms, but they're not getting rid of the Candida. And Candida and cancer have certain things in common. One is they eat into your tissues. Two, sugar feeds them like crazy. Three, their mere presence is an immunosuppressant. So when you have somebody who has Candida and you're giving them a treatment to help them handle the symptoms or suppress the symptoms, but not get rid of the Candida, it's as though someone has cancer and you're giving them some kind of a drug so they don't feel pain from the cancer, but you're still letting the cancer run rampant through their body.
Wow.
It's a viewpoint.
It's going to take over, yeah.
It's a viewpoint. And eventually with Candida, when Candida gets bad enough, you develop leaky gut syndrome. And leaky gut syndrome causes autoimmune disease. So it's a process. You get Candida, you get leaky gut, you get autoimmune disease, and now you've got rheumatoid arthritis, or you have lupus, or you have all these other symptoms and all these other quote fancy illnesses. But the main problem is you have a yeast overgrowth because your intestinal tract became imbalanced. And the true term that we use is dysbiosis. Dysbiosis is a blanket term, which means you have an imbalance between all the friendly bacteria and the bad ones. And under the umbrella of dysbiosis would come SIBO, it would come different parasite infections, Candida, etc. So that's really where the concern should be. Because we don't want to get into, you could get into taking pantothenic acid and molybdenum and selenium and a lot of different nutrients, which would help the symptoms of Candida by detoxifying its wastes, but it's not getting rid of Candida. And that's something I don't want to see people get stuck into or get tricked by. So it's not really the correct thing. It's not the right direction to be heading.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. And so as far as what do you look for when you do those studies on the person's blood work? Like obviously you're looking for, exactly where your body is imbalanced, but what are you looking at and what do you see in these blood tests for these people with Candida?
Well, there are certain parameters. You don't even need our biocybernetic system to be able to figure this out. There are parameters in a typical blood test. One of the patterns is very high lymphocytes and low neutrophils with a total protein that's starting to get towards the top, sort of hitting and also a reverse in the albumin globulin ratio. That's a sign the person could have Candida. That would warrant then going ahead and testing them for it.
Gotcha. Are there any tests available for like at-home use that you could check for Candida, or is that something that you need to go see a provider for?
Yes and no. I developed a test specifically for my practice, which is one that's self-administered and done at home by the patient for their convenience. It's a urine test that looks for waste products coming from Candida and free radicals that the Candida generates. But that test is only available to my patients. We tried making it available just for people in general, but we got swamped with too many phone calls from people who had questions about interpretation, and then they wanted to know about treatment. So that just didn't work. As far as other tests for Candida, there really are only two that are usable, that are commercial. One is called an organic acid test, which is done by Genova Labs of Great Plains. And they have a specific dysbiosis panel where you send them a urine sample, they do the test, usually it takes about 3 weeks. You get the results back and they'll tell you if you have elevated organic acids from Candida. The other is a stool test. Very often now they're called microbiome tests. The better ones are DNA tests, where they actually do a DNA study of your stool looking for DNA of all microorganisms. Those are good, but you have to know how to interpret them, because sometimes they won't find Candida, because Candida is very tricky. It hides in your intestines, so they won't find it. But if they find an absence of the friendly bacteria, you could then be guaranteed you have an overgrowth of Candida because of how it works. Friendly bacteria protects you from Candida overgrowth. The minute that friendly bacteria is compromised, the Candida overgrows. So if you do any kind of stool test, whether it's a traditional culture test or a DNA test, and your friendly bacteria is below where it should be, you can be guaranteed your Candida is in excess, even if it's not showing on the test.
Gotcha. And as far as a good probiotic supplement, I mean, is that something would you say that that's like the main supplement that you would recommend to your patients simply to promote more of that good bacteria?
I would say I would say the best way to use a probiotic if you have Candida is to take your bottle of the probiotic, go into your bathroom, go to your toilet, open up the jar, pour the probiotic directly into the toilet, and then say, "Gee, what a dope!" Because
Really,
probiotics don't work. Now,
really,
this is why
okay,
the companies want me dead. You see, what happens is when you take probiotics and you have Candida, the probiotic is repelled by the Candida. The Candida actually pushes the probiotic away from your intestinal tract. It prevents it from sticking there. If probiotics worked for Candida the way the thought is, I wouldn't be in practice.
yeah, right. It's like just take a bottle of probiotics.
No
So
one would need me. The trick to probiotics is to get your Candida levels low enough so that the probiotics will reattach to the lining and stick and multiply. And then that protects you from Candida. So you've got to get rid of the Candida first. It's like a game of musical chairs. You have to get rid of the Candida first. When you get rid of the Candida in a large enough amount, then the probiotics can stick and then things can go back to normal. But you got to get there first. And that's what the trick is.
gotcha. Another thing I want to discuss, the truth about supplementation. Obviously, it's a billion-dollar industry. You have your GNCs, your vitamin shops, all these companies selling nutritional supplements. Can you talk about the effectiveness of these supplements? And do you think that people out there are abusing nutritional and herbal supplements?
Well, the simple fact of the matter is, in America, especially in America, our food is genetically modified. It's for the most part, it's not organic. People who eat a diet, which is what happens in Europe. If you go to Europe, if you go to Italy or someplace, and you ask them if this is organic, is this non-GMO, they don't know what the hell you're talking about. They're going to say, "Oh, you see that mountain over there? That's where we grew this." Yeah. They don't know about genetically modified food is illegal in Europe. Everything that they grow in Europe is practically organic. And those foods have a much higher nutrient content. There have been many studies done in the last 50, 60 years that showed that as time goes on and as we've gotten more into commercial agriculture and have been following the lead of Monsanto, the food is becoming less and less nutrient dense.
Yeah, yeah.
So the unfortunate, and then you have pollution. Pollution taxes your body and makes you lose nutrients. So between the food being grown non-organic, it's GMO, and you have the pollution that we have, unfortunately, most people do need supplements. I have the great advantage of having been able to see this with my own eyes in doing the testing I've been doing on people, because I actually see what level of nutrients they need. I see what levels of minerals they have stored in their body, what their vitamin levels are, their fatty acids. So I can see on an individual basis, because it's different for everyone.
Yeah,
just like everybody, has different fingerprints. Everybody needs an individual program based on testing. That's the only way you can do it. You have to take the individual, run the tests on them to see what their own nutrient levels are and what they need. And then you can say, well, now I'm giving you the right dose of a vitamin. Very often, as you just said, people are abusing supplements. It's not unusual at all. When I was first in practice, I had a medical doctor come to me because he had a really bad prostate problem, and he was referred by a chiropractor I knew. And this fellow came to me and tells me this story. He said, well, 2 years ago, I read about zinc, and I had a really bad prostate problem. I read how good zinc was for the prostate, so I started taking zinc. I took 100 milligrams a day. And I asked him, did you take anything else? He says, no, only the zinc, 100 milligrams. I took it every day. My prostate was great for 2 years, and now it started to get bad again. So I said, what am I doing wrong? I'm still taking the zinc. So he says, maybe I have to double it. So I'll take 200 milligrams. He doubled it, and his prostate got even worse. Oh, no. So I told him, immediately, I want you to stop the zinc, and I want you to start taking copper. And in the interim, I'm going to do a hair analysis on you because I want to see the tissue levels of the zinc and copper. He calls me back a week later and says, the prostate now totally cleared up. And he says, what happened? So I explained to him, zinc and copper. Yeah, zinc and copper are antagonists. One of the symptoms of a copper deficiency is bacterial infections. So this fellow took zinc to the point where he drove his copper so low that his prostate got infected.
Wow. Wow.
That's an example of how you could be abusing supplements right there.
So what do people out there need to know about correctly and safely using supplements?
Go to a certified clinical nutritionist, have them test you to find out what you really need, because that's the only way. There's no other way to do it. You can take a multivitamin, but the multivitamin is not really going to help you much because it's not going to focus in on what your particular key deficiencies are. It's just going to give you a little bit of everything. You want to find not a dietitian, by the way. Dietitians are the people in the hospitals who sell you Jell-O. So you're not looking for a dietitian. You're looking for a clinical nutritionist, certified, hopefully by your state, or has some type of credentials, so that you know he's on the upswing of what's happening, and have him. And you want one who tests. You want one who specifically does testing to find out what you need, not somebody who's self-styled, who hobby horses with giving you his favorite vitamins. You want someone who's going to do a test to find out what you need.
Gotcha. And as far as these tests, I mean, you've mentioned a bunch already. Is this simply a blood test, like that you could find out all the deficiencies that you have in your body?
No, most blood tests really only tell you what's in your blood at that moment.
Gotcha. Okay.
There are blood tests you can do that then can be interpreted by software, which look at it from a nutritional aspect and tell you more long range what you need. Then there are also urine tests, which are called organic acid tests, which tell you your nutrient levels. You can also do it using hair analysis. There are a lot of labs that do that. So the idea is to use some kind of biochemical test that gives you a marker of what's actually happening in your body. Kinesiology, the chiropractors use, can be effective sometimes too. The problem with kinesiology that I find is sometimes things can change too quickly. I'll give you an example. You can test someone with muscle testing, find out they're low in a particular B vitamin, check them a couple of days after that, and they're not low in it anymore because you satisfied that dysfunction. You want to know from the testing what you need more chronically, long range.
Gotcha. And your office, like, what's your go-to exams? You mentioned a couple there. Like, which is the one that you would prescribe the most?
Most people come to us because they have Candida. So we first would handle their Candida. And then when we want to assess their nutrient levels, my go-to test is the organic acid panel that's done by Genova Labs or by Great Plains. I couple that with some type of a mineral test, either a red blood cell mineral test or a hair analysis, which is done either by Doctor's Data or Trace Elements Inc. Those are my two favorite labs. And the hair analysis tells you the level of minerals which are in your tissues. So it's different than any other, because when you do a urine test for minerals, you're shown it's excretion. What's urine? Urine is a mode of excretion. So is stool. What's blood? Blood is a mode of transportation through your body. But a tissue, like the hair or the red blood cells, is showing you what's building up in your cells. And that's going to give you a better idea of what you need more long range.
Got it. Is any of this covered by insurance by any chance?
It depends on your plan. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes not. Sometimes.
Okay, great. No, and I want to touch on that topic that you were mentioning about Europe. I mean, I remember me and my wife went to Portugal and Spain, and I mean, everybody was like in shape. They walk so much. The food is organic, and we were eating like crazy. I mean, we were eating bread, drinking wine, and I mean, we basically didn't gain a pound coming over from Europe. I mean, it's just the quality of food is just so much better over there. So I couldn't agree with you more there.
We have so much going on in our country, at least we've had. And now, we're at I think the last time I looked, the United States was 26th in world health, which means there were 26 nations ahead of us as far as health goes. And it's primarily due to the food. I'll come right out and say it. It's Monsanto has a lot to do with it. Monsanto was the corporation from hell because they're the ones who are responsible for these genetically modified foods, which your body doesn't really know how to handle. Eating a diet high in genetically modified foods is one thing I left out before, which actually could cause Candida.
And that's a total money grab right there. I totally agree with you on that. So let's talk about the effects of side effects and how medicine can cause a deficiency and make you even more sick. So can you go into that as far as all the medications that are prescribed in this country?
Well, first off the bat, I'm going to go back to Candida. Candida is primarily caused by antibiotics. It can be caused by steroids. It can be caused by any kind of estrogenic medication. Any med that raises your estrogen can cause Candida. And also, believe it or not, antacid medications cause Candida, because the antacids raise the pH of your intestinal tract. By cutting back your stomach acid, they're actually causing the pH of your intestines to elevate, which is what causes Candida. Candida loves a really alkaline environment in your gut. It likes the pH to be above 7.2. That's where it starts to overgrow. The purpose of acidophilus in most probiotics is actually to regulate the pH of your intestines. Acidophilus. So acidophilus releases acids which bring the pH down and away from the range that Candida likes.
Gotcha. And what is, like, talk about the importance of a balanced microbiome, because, we hear all the time, our immune system, especially in today's world, how important our immune system is. I mean, a huge percentage of our immune system is located in our gut. So what is the importance of a balanced microbiome?
The immune system in the body actually has 6 parts, and the first part is your gut. That's the first part of your immune system there. And the purpose of the gut immune system is to ward off and stop your body from ever having any of these pathogens invade and get into your bloodstream, because the GI tract is the gate where nutrients enter your blood and bad things are supposed to be prevented from entering. Bad things like toxins, chemicals, and germs. So the microbiome is what protects, it repels the bad organisms. Like I was saying before, that the Candida will repel the probiotic. Well, the reverse is true. When the probiotics are established in your gut, they repel viruses and bacteria and whatnot, stop them from being able to enter your bloodstream. So that's and the probiotics also help detoxify your body. Bifidus bacteria works very, very closely with your liver to help your liver detoxify, which is a point not many people know. If you lose bifidus bacteria from your colon, your liver's ability to detox drops.
Wow.
And probiotics also help your body manufacture certain B vitamins. The probiotics also help your body absorb nutrients correctly and help you digest your food. So their purpose is pretty widespread.
And are there any other supplements that you would recommend out there for gut health in general?
Well, there are products on the market which are combinations of fiber, probiotics, and prebiotics. And those are worthwhile things to take. That's something someone could take safely without having to go to a doctor or a nutritionist. There's a pretty good chance that just taking that product would be healthy for someone.
Got it.
But other than that, I really couldn't say, because that's something that you need. That's an individual. Again, everyone's an individual, and you need to take what you need individually. A good idea for anybody is to do a 23andMe test. Any of those genetic tests that they have out there, which will tell you what nutrients you tend to need genetically, is a very good idea. But there's a caveat. A genetic test doesn't tell you what you need now. It tells you what you may need based on your genes. So if you do a genetic test and it says, well, you need CoQ10, you need fish oil and all this, that doesn't mean that you're grossly deficient in those nutrients now. It just means you have a genetic tendency towards demanding more.
Okay, so to finish off here, I kind of want to, because obviously you threw out a lot of information out there, which is amazing. I love the topic today. For the general public, for the audience out there, somebody comes in, they have Candida, take me through that process of me or of somebody being your patient, and what is the ideal scenario as far as what they should take, the tests that they're going to take, and then just basically leading them to the alleviation of the Candida.
Well, a person would come in and they're going to, usually a lot of the people who come to me are more knowledgeable than most of the doctors they've seen, because they've done so much research that they know more, and they already know what the doctor did wrong. So they'll come in, they'll tell me their whole history. And if I feel that there's probable cause that they do have Candida based on everything. Then we decide what testing they need. The testing can vary depending on the person's symptoms, but let's say we do the test, we find out they do have Candida. The first thing we put them on is phase 0, which acts as a colon cleanse. And it's the reason why is because we found out that people with Candida very often have parasites of different types. So we want to eliminate the parasites because the parasites make it harder to get rid of the Candida when they're there. So we give them this colon cleanse that we call phase 0 that has 4 or 5 different products that I have formulated, which gradually strip off and eliminate the parasites in the top layers of the Candida in their mucous membranes, which is their small intestine and their colon. Then when they've done that to the point where the test says we're ready, we then put them on phase 1, which is our systemic elimination of Candida. And on phase 1, we have the person rotate. Remember before I was talking about the mutations Candida goes through, that it becomes resistant to medicine.
Yeah.
We get around that by having the person rotate 4 or 5 different medicines, which are antifungal. Usually they're herbal, because the herbal ones won't hurt the patient, regardless of how long they're on them usually.
Yeah.
So we have the person rotate these 4 or 5 antifungals. Usually we'll have them rotate each antifungal for 4 or 5 days. So just theoretically, if they're doing 4 for 4 days, it's 16 days to go through it once.
Yeah.
And we'll have them repeat that until, again, the testing that we're doing says their level has dropped to where we expect it to be for that point. The phase 1 program, the systemic elimination, usually gets rid of 70% of the Candida in their body, of the excess Candida. So when they've hit that point, we put them on phase 2, which is the intestinal Candida treatment. Now, in this phase, we are looking to destroy the Candida that's really deep rooted in their intestinal tract. This is the Candida that will multiply and come back and make them relapse if we don't get rid of it. There's a lot of people, when they finish phase 1, they think they're cured, but they're not. They're not. So we use antifungals, which specifically are fatty acid based. The 2 most common that we use are caprylic acid and undecylenic acid. Sometimes we also use lauricidic acid. And you could also in that phase use citrus seed extract, grapefruit seed extract, because that's also highly intestinal. The idea is you want to be able to use something that's going to permeate the intestinal cells and kill the Candida right at the roots. Because keep this in mind, Candida grows roots right into your intestinal tract. Candida is a plant. It's a vegetation. Wow. It's like having broccoli growing in your intestines, and it's growing roots into your intestinal tract. That's how you develop leaky gut. Candida pierces your intestinal tract looking for food, which is really looking for glucose. It's looking for blood sugar. So it permeates your capillaries. It breaks into them, and that's how you develop leaky gut. So in order to kill that, you've got to have a medicine that's going to absorb like oil into leather, which is what the fatty acids will do in your intestines. They'll go right in there and they'll singe the Candida right at the roots if you take it long enough. Amazing. So when we accomplish that, now we've gotten rid of the Candida for the most part. Now the next thing we're going to be concerned about is the probiotics. But if you have leaky gut syndrome, you have to handle the leaky gut before you go on probiotics. Because if you have leaky gut, the probiotics are going to go right into your bloodstream and cause all kinds of allergic reactions. Your body's immune system will see these bacteria coming in there and it's going to attack them. It's not going to know, oh, that's a $20 bottle of probiotics I bought at GNC. It doesn't care about that. It only sees bacteria coming into your bloodstream. So if someone has leaky gut, they've got to fix their leaky gut before they go on probiotics. If they don't have leaky gut, they can go right on the probiotics.
And just to finish off, like obviously you described the protocol that you perform in your office. Like, talk to me about the results that you've gotten, from what they were experiencing symptom-wise before and then after when it comes to your protocol.
Well, the most common thing that people notice is their digestion comes back together. If they had constipation or diarrhea, that stops. The bloating and gas stops. They usually have more energy because their immune system is not constantly fighting this yeast, and their cognitive is much better. Their memory, their ability to remember names, this is much better. This is in the typical case, because those are the typical symptoms. Occasionally, we get things that actually defy my own belief. One that comes to mind, which was the most amazing, is we had a patient who was actually losing the structure, the bone structure and the collagen in his face.
Wow.
And his whole face was caving in. And the doctors said it was an autoimmune condition he had, but they couldn't understand why or what it was really about. He went on our Candida program. Not only did that entirely stop, but it all reformed.
Wow.
Which was pretty amazing. Another one I think of recently was a 3-year-old girl who had totally lost all her hair on her head. And she went on the Candida program, and the hair grew back within maybe about 6 months it took for it all to grow back.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing.
So those are some things I wouldn't have believed myself. But I've learned when it comes to this, you never have a preconceived notion because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no doubt. Wow, Doc, such amazing information that you've provided the audience today.
Here's one other thing I want to let everyone know. COVID can cause Candida. So can the vaccine.
Oh,
I don't
geez.
know.
Okay.
I don't, and I don't want to get into a political debate about the vaccine. I know what the facts are, but I'm just going to tell people that in my office, we get phone calls from people who've taken the vaccine, and for the last 6 months, they've had horrible symptoms that won't go away. And when we test them, we find that very often the vaccine has caused Candida. Also, but COVID itself can cause Candida. So you imagine this, a person gets COVID, there's all the hype, he's terrorized, right? He's got the booming headache, he's got all these symptoms. The COVID finally runs its course in 7 to 10 days, but going forward, he never feels the same. So why doesn't he ever quite feel the same? It's because now COVID has caused Candida.
Wow.
So now he has Candida. And he doesn't know this, you see. All he knows is I had COVID. Now I don't feel like I don't have the headache anymore. I don't have all the muscle aches and pains. I'm not, I don't have the bronchial problems. That's gone away, but I just don't feel right.
Wow. So whether you've gotten COVID or gotten the vaccine, would it be a good idea to go get checked for Candida?
It would be, especially if you're a person, as I'm depicting here, who's having these symptoms. They're having any of the key symptoms of Candida now, which are cognitive problems, digestive problems, let's say rashes, because rashes are very typical with Candida. Candida will cause eczema, it causes psoriasis. So if you're having any of the Candida symptoms that are typical after COVID, it's a good idea to go get checked and see if you have indeed Candida.
It's great info right there. So Doc, where can people find you? Like, where's your office located? Do you do virtual consults? Do you have a website, social media? Just let everybody know how people can reach out and get in touch with you.
Yeah, we're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. All they have to do is put my name in. Do a search for Michael BIAMONTE and then put in Candida. You'll find us easily. My website is health-truth.com. And my other website is New York City Candida Doctor. So we have those two. Most likely, if a person just puts in my name and puts in Candida, they're going to find me.
Gotcha. Well, Dr. BIAMONTE.
And by the way, yes, we do only virtual consultations. I did my first consultation by phone in 1987 with a patient, and we've been our office has gradually been changing ever since then. And now, the way the internet's evolved, we really only do virtual.
You were ahead of the game.
Practice back then, yeah.
Amazing. Well, Dr. BIAMONTE, thank you so much for providing so much value to the audience today. I really appreciate your time, and good luck with everything.
Thank you. It was great talking to you.
Thank you. Take care.